It's it off to Mccaffrey. There he goes. It's a C-Mac attack. McCaffrey, one man to beat.
This is Desmond Johnson on the Bleav and Carolina Panthers podcast here on the Bleav Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network for professionals. Do you believe? If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate the show on iTunes. We're available in your favorite directories: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Luminary, and TuneIn. You can also find us at Bleav.com and at Bleav Podcasts on Twitter. And welcome to a post-draft edition of the Bleav in Carolina Panthers podcast. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by Sports Illustrated Schuyler Callihan. Schuyler, we got a lot to dig into today. Instead of doing the traditional, let's look back at this year's draft and see if they hit or miss on certain picks, because we really don't know until these guys are out there on the field. We decided to not only look at the bottom half of the draft. Well, of course, we'll talk about Ikem and Matt Corral and the top end of the Panthers draft, but we also will look at the guys that they brought in after the draft, undrafted free agents in Panthers news, and we'll look at the all of the draft classes underneath head coach Matt Rhule. He's had two different general managers. Of course, Marty Herney was here for year one, 2020. Scott Fitterer came in starting last year, 2021, and now he's got two draft classes underneath his belt. And honestly, it's easier to kind of grade classes the further away you get from them. So we can really look at the historic 2020 class, all defensive players taken, and grade that better now as we're 2 seasons away from it, as well as 2021, where the Panthers wheeled and dealed into 11 different draft picks in that one. So we'll definitely get into all of that. We'll hit you with the Panther news first, but before we do all of that, a quick word from one of our sponsors at Bet Online. Our partners at Bet Online continue to be the #1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including updated odds on the NBA playoffs, fights, and even next season's futures. Don't forget that Major League Baseball is back as well. Who are you picking to win the World Series? Bet Online is your continued source for all of your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started. Just head over to their website today or use your mobile device to join and use our promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Do you have a favorite to make to the NBA Finals, Schuyler? Schuyler also beat writer for the Charlotte Hornets, so he's around the NBA a lot as well. Do you have a favorite right now?
In the East, I really think it's between Miami and Milwaukee, and I'm going to lean towards Milwaukee. I just feel like they're the most talented team, and I mean, who's going to stop Giannis? I mean, you're going to have to beat him 4 times in a 7-game set. Like, it's just, I just don't see it happening.
That's my thing. It's like, and I'm probably going to do this on Rundown on Saturday, but the disrespect of Giannis, I feel like we have disrespected this man for too long. He's won 2 league MVPs. Just had a Wilt Chamberlain performance in a closeout finals game last year. And it feels like we never talk about the Bucks. They're defending world champions, and we just never discuss them. And I watched them Sunday basically take apart this Boston team that everyone's all jumped on the bandwagon of because they beat the Brooklyn Nets, who were a broken shell of a team by the time they got to them. And now it's like everyone's like, oh, wow, Milwaukee's actually pretty good. Well, yeah, they've been pretty good for like 4 years. So like, and no one talks about them. I want to see Milwaukee Golden State. I feel like that'll be the best matchup, although we might get a Phoenix-Milwaukee rematch. And I never thought I would say this, but I wouldn't be mad at that. Phoenix versus Milwaukee.
I really hope Memphis makes it, but I just don't see it happening. Like, I just think it'd be so entertaining to see John Morant in an NBA Finals. Like, but I think he'll get them there. I think one day. I think we will see the Grizzlies in the NBA Finals at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, but not this year.
I think they're like a year or two early. So, but yeah, I like Memphis. I like how they play. You could tell at the end of that Memphis Golden State game on Sunday that they just kind of inexperienced, kind of showed up the last couple of minutes. Golden State, man, they are very hard to defend. They have basically replaced Kevin Durant with Jordan Poole, and the ball actually moves around a lot better with Poole than it did with Durant. He would kind of move into ISO here and there, but the Warriors are like pre-Durant Warriors now, and losing Draymond and all the stuff that happened in that game one, and for them to still lose, it made me feel like Golden State might end up sweeping them. But We'll see. We'll see. We kind of poke around a little bit of everything here on the Bleav in Panthers podcast. Let's get into some Panther news. This week, the Panthers added another rookie quarterback to the mix. You might be thinking we're talking about third-round draft pick Matt Corral, who the Panthers traded up for. We are not. We are actually talking about an undrafted free agent the Panthers brought in, and that is Elon quarterback Davis Cheek, another hometown product. He played at Butler High School. Some of you may be familiar with Butler down in Charlotte. He started 40 games in 5 years at Elon, threw for 8,548 yards and 51 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. So he'll join a quarterback room with Matt Corral, Sam Darnold, and PJ Walker. Before I even go into the rest of the list, do you think that PJ Walker's ears perked up when they signed Davis Cheek at all? Or do you think he's pretty safe in his spot?
No, I mean, I think he's pretty safe. I mean, typically when you see these types of things, it's to have somebody there during the rookie minicamp. I mean, obviously they'll have Matt Corral, but they've got to have somebody to throw the ball around at rookie minicamp. So I think that's a big reason. But who knows? Maybe he impresses during rookie minicamp and maybe finds his way deeper, or still on the roster deep into the summer. But he takes care of the ball. Obviously, like you said, it was it 51 touchdowns and 21 picks. So
yeah, over 4 years or 5 years, excuse me. Yeah, so
he takes immaculate care of the football. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think this is anything more than just having a body there for minicamp.
Pretty good story though. Coming from Charlotte, getting a chance to see if he can achieve a dream, being a professional player, playing for the Carolina Panthers, just like first round pick Ikem Ekwonu from NC State, who we'll get to here in just a bit. Panthers added 5 wide receivers, adding to that position group. I don't know if any of these guys are going to get on, but you might recognize some of these names. Virginia's Rashawn Henry, Eastern Washington's Talalo Limu-Jones, Florida State's Andrew Parchment, Miami's Charleston Rambo. I want to say I remember Rambo, or am I thinking of like a brother or someone else whose last name was Rambo? I think it was the kid from Miami.
Oklahoma.
Yes.
And then he transferred to Miami.
So that name stood out when I was reading through this. And then Utah State's Derek Wright. They signed 3 linebackers to add depth to that position, including Illinois' Kalon Tolson, Boston College's Isaiah Graham Mobley, Fresno State's Aaron Mosby. The rest of this undrafted class they brought in includes North Dakota State tight end Josh Babsick, Penn State safety Drew Hartleb, Penn State running back John Lovett, and Kentucky defensive tackle Marquand McCall. Most of these guys, the main common denominator amongst all of them is speed. Hartlob, for example, the safety from Penn State, he ran a 4.2 240 at their pro day this spring. That's what? That's faster than Kaylan Barnes, who we drafted in the 7th round, who we'll get to our draft classes here in a sec, was the fastest player at this year's scouting combine at 4.23. Tolson ran a 4.45 at 235 pounds, which would have put him in the top 3 of the linebackers at the combine this year as well. So clearly Matt Rhule and Scott Fitterer went into this offseason and last year really with the intent to get faster overall, from starters to second string to whoever might have to fill in a gap, special teams. It feels like speed is a necessity for these Panthers. And you kind of see it in all the draft picks that they selected, that all of them kind of had a theme of either freak athlete or speed, like at their position.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, again, they only had a limited number of picks. So I think it was the right thing to do instead of reaching for a need at certain spots. I mean, in a way, they kind of did fill their needs in terms of positions, but I don't know if their needs are filled. But when you look at guys like Brandon Smith, Amari Barno, Kaylan Barnes, I mean, these dudes are freaking athletic. Like, they can shoot out of a cannon. They're extremely fast. They fly all over the field. And that's kind of what you have to do, I think, when you don't have as many chances up at the plate in the draft as you did maybe a year ago when you had 11 picks. So I think they did a good job. I think that what comes with that is there's a lot of boom and bust potential with this. So I don't know that we're going to see this class be as strong as the 2 previous under Matt Rhule. But if they all live up to their potential, then this might be the best class by far. It's all about that boom or bust and potential in this class. Really past Ikem Ekwonu. I mean, even Matt Corral. I mean, he's boom or bust. Like, there's not one guy after Ikem Ekwonu that I can pinpoint and be like, yeah, this guy is definitely going to be good. They're not going to really have to work with him. Like, there's stuff there with Brandon Smith. He's huge. He's fast for a linebacker. Amari Barno he honestly reminds me a lot of Brian Burns coming out of college, except he doesn't have the same pass rushing skills as Burns did. Now, good pass rusher, but he's kind of a one-trick pony right now. They're going to have to develop some other ways that he can win off those blocks. But Kaylan Barnes in the 7th round, like you said, absolute speedster. Probably not going to factor much on the defense, but he's going to be a gunner, potentially a returner. Yeah, so there's definitely value in this draft. It's just about how much these guys are going to contribute.
Let's actually start off with that, because I wanted to hit the last 3 draft classes, because in the offseason I've gone from torches and pitchforks for getting Matt Rhule out of here to let's kind of see to, well, apparently Tepper is fine with what they're doing, so let's just follow the process, trust the process, as the 76ers would say a couple years ago. And by all accounts, when I look at it in the offseason, the draft classes they brought in, I can't be really mad at any of them, because all of them look like they're very well done, especially when I look around the league and I see other teams doing weird things. New England, for example, trading up for
Cold strings
in the first round.
The Belichick move.
The best clip I saw on draft weekend was Sean McVay and the general manager for the Rams, and they were sitting there talking about a pick they just picked in the first round or something. And the general manager is staring at a TV off to the side, and his mouth just gets like big. He's like, "Oh my gosh, they got Strange or whatever." And McVay turns on. He's like, "What?" He's like, "Who got him?" "Oh, the Bill got him." And they were like, "Man, we were just sitting here talking about how we could maybe pick up Strange at pick 130, and the Patriots grabbed him in the first round." And that just kind of shows you that these teams, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Like a guy that one team might have rated number 1 on their board might be number 20 on somebody else's board. So you really don't know for sure until after the draft is over what's what. And the Panthers themselves won't even reveal exactly what their board looked like, but we can kind of get a good idea based off of how they did their draft. And let's just start off with it. 2022 Carolina Panthers draft. You probably heard me and Schuyler talk about the top half of it on the rundown on Saturday. Let's just get through that real quick. Ikem Ekwonu, first round, 6th overall. 6'4", 320 pounds from NC State. A lot of people had him as the best overall talent in this entire draft. Your thoughts of Icky falling to the Panthers at 6 after a run of defensive players altered the board from the very beginning of the first round?
I mean, I did not think he was going to be there. And as each pick came by, I was just, for the Panthers' sake, hoping that they'd have at least 2 options at the defensive tackle. We got to the Giants at 5, and I'm like, okay, this was the scenario that we played out in our mock draft. And I said, well, if I were the Giants, I would take the offensive tackle first, because the Carolina Panthers are probably going to want one themselves. They're not taking Kayvon Thibodeau, whether he's there or not. I really feel strongly that they were going to take a tackle regardless if Thibodeau was there or not. So to see them take Thibodeau first was a little shocking. They still did get Evan Neal, so you really can't complain about that. But for them to get arguably what may be the best player in this entire draft when it's all said and done at number 6, like, that's great value. And more importantly, they didn't reach for a quarterback. And Scott Fitter had talked about how they feel comfortable taking one guy at number 6, potentially maybe 2 quarterbacks. But the fact that they were allowing themselves to be patient and just see how things played out, and they still it worked out the way they wanted it. The top quarterback on their board was Matt Corral. So, and they got him in the 3rd round. They only had to give up a future 3rd and a 4th to get him. And that's not really all that much in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you want to get that 3rd round pick back, it's easy to trade back into the 3rd round. The Panthers just did it this year.
Yeah. I mean, and plus I think I feel a lot better about getting him in the 3rd as opposed to them,
anywhere in the
panicking and getting him like at the 6th pick, like in the 1st or something like that. Like, that would have been the eye-opening, what are they doing, like, pick of the entire draft. Even if he panned out, it just would have been looked at like, whoa, they reached for him. Kind of how the Giants are having to deal with it with Daniel Jones, like, every week in terms of where they picked him. But again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. If the Giants really wanted him that high, he probably would have still been there at 20. They didn't care. And the Panthers practiced infinite patience in terms of waiting for the board to come to them. As you mentioned, the year before, we'll look at that draft class in 2021 in a second, had 11 draft picks. So it's not necessarily the Panthers needed a bunch of draft picks this year. They just needed to hit on the picks they had. And the first one nailed it out of the park. I wanted Evan Neal, as on record on these episodes. I wanted Evan Neal out of the 3, Charles Cross and Icky being the third. But when we got to pick 6 and all 3 were still sitting there, I was okay. You got to get Ekwonu, because they started rolling his footage, and I didn't realize that this dude likes to pancake people like everywhere. This dude's running. It's like Michael Orr in The Blonde Side, like the fictional Michael Orr, where he's like running dudes into like dumpsters and stuff, taking them to the school bus. That's kind of like Icky. And I didn't realize he was from Charlotte. I didn't realize it was like a hometown kid. He said he grew up with Thomas Davis jersey was his favorite jersey. So, I mean, it was just a feel-good story. And I think it's going to be something that actually helps the Carolina Panthers, where they have turned this offensive line from something to be embarrassed about, to be honest, into a pretty damn solid unit. Like, looking at it right now, I assume they're going to kick Brady Christensen over to left guard inside. You got Taylor Moton and now Icky on your ends, left tackle, right tackle. You signed Bozeman from Baltimore to be the center. You signed Corbett, who just came off winning a Super Bowl ring from the LA Rams, to play guard, right guard, if I'm not mistaken. And that's your 5. And you'll see. And they drafted some other kids. I don't know if they'll stick around or not, but they did draft Cade Mays in the 6th round, an interesting prospect, 6'6", 325, for some depth. And they still have some dudes, Deontay Brown, who they drafted last year. I want to say Cam Irvin's penciled in as a backup to left right now, which is good. Don't put him on the field if you don't need to.
Matt Rhule will be your backup center / swing guard, I believe. So,
I mean, the situation is way better than it was at this time last year.
He's now, like Irving and Elflein, they're not great starters. We know that. But I think if you can have them on your roster as backups, depth players, like I think that's okay. Like, those guys are good enough to be 2s in the NFL. Now, are they starters? Clearly not. But I think when it comes to the offensive line, you're going to have injuries. You're going to have stuff happen. You probably feel a little bit better knowing that Pat Elflein's your backup center than maybe Sam Tecklenburg.
Yeah.
Or, you might feel better about Cam Irving over, Trent Scott maybe. But I don't know. Maybe that's a toss-up to some people.
I'm fine with them being backups. Yeah. I was not fine with Carolina signing them last year and trotting them out there as starters. I was like, I know these guys are not going to be good enough to do whatever. And Sam Darnold got hurt. McCaffrey got hurt really on a non-contact type of thing. And honestly, his past 2 or 3 injuries have felt the same way, where it kind of felt like it was a strain or something like that. So I'm not really too worried about McCaffrey coming back. I'm ecstatic to see him run behind this offensive line, though. Like, he hasn't had an offensive line like this to run behind, and Darnold's never had an offensive line like this to throw behind either. I'm not saying that Darnold's going to have a complete 180 and save his career, save his job or whatnot, but if he had an opportunity to do it, it's now. He's never going to have it as good as what he's going to have this upcoming year, and I think he's going to have a short leash. Like, the Charlotte faithful are not going to sit around and watch 8 games of Sam Darnold before they decide they want to see Matt Corral. Like, that's just, it might happen preseason, 3rd quarter, game 1.
I think a lot of what is going to happen is you're going to see that. You're going to see the fans pressure the coaching staff to put Corral in a situation he's not ready for. And to be honest, I don't really remember how Sam started in New York. I don't know if they had a veteran in place. I almost think he was a starter like day 1. If I remember.
You know what? That's a great question. I know they had bottomed out because he was like the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah. I want to say he was thrown in as the starter right away. Maybe he had like Joe Flacco or somebody. But
I'm trying to pull it now and see how many games he actually started.
The one thing you don't want to have is to throw Matt Corral out there in a situation where he's not ready. He's clearly got ways to go developing. Like, you want this guy to develop and be a successful franchise quarterback. You throw that guy out there way too early, you're like Matt Rhule said, you can ruin a kid.
Yeah, he started 13 games rookie year, Sam Darnold. So
he must have started. I swore he could have started week 1, but I'm not sure.
He might. I'm trying to, maybe somebody got hurt or something. I'm pulling it up now just to kind of see
who the quarterback was before Darnold, to be honest with you.
Let's see. They have
Patrick, maybe. I mean, he's been all over the map. I mean, maybe it was Fitzmagic, but
I don't really say. I'm looking through to see who else it could have been, because did Darnold get hurt and that's why he only played 13 games? Because he must have started at the beginning. Josh McCown was a quarterback on that team. He played, it was like 2 games. That probably was at the end of the year. Or no, he played 3. Yeah. So Josh McCown was the other quarterback on this team. I can't see that he was starting over Darnold. He probably was the backup. And then I want to say Darnold got hurt.
They get hurt at one point.
Yeah. I want to say he got hurt towards the end of the year and they sat him and McCown came in. But McCown, I mean, he was 39 years old on this roster. It was 2018. So, and Darnold did not play that well. 17 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, threw for 28 a rookie year. I mean, he was 21. He had nothing on offense. He had Robbie Anderson, Bilal Powell. Wow, haven't heard that name in a while. Yeah, I don't recognize hardly anybody on the defense. Doesn't really have anyone. Yeah, the Jets were a mess. So this is gonna be the first time Sam actually has this available to him. And Sam is about a 60% completion passer, but he knew going into it. They told him they were going to leave this weekend with the quarterback. Now, we talked about this off camera before we started. Would you have rather had Baker Mayfield than Matt Corral? Because that's really the choice. They were literally on the phone with Cleveland trying to get it straightened out. And thankfully, Cleveland just would not bite more of Mayfield's salary in order to trade him, which stalled the whole thing. Meanwhile, Matt Rhule's talking to Bill Belichick about moving up to the Patriots' 3rd round pick, which they ended up getting 94th overall. They use it on Matt Corral. By all accounts, it looks as if Corral might have been the first QB on their board this whole time. Would you have rather had Baker Mayfield? Because Baker Mayfield now feels like it's just Sam Darnold in a different jersey, isn't it?
It is. He's probably a little less athletic than Sam. Probably doesn't have the arm that Sam does. But if you're talking about just having to pick between the two, I would rather have Matt Corral. And the only reason I say that is because he's a younger quarterback. He's going to be on a cheaper contract. And I think bringing in Baker now would signify to the fan base, like, we're trying to win now. It's another win now move. Even though he's not an elite quarterback, it's showing like, okay, we think we can do something now. Whereas if you draft Matt Corral, you're going to sit him behind Sam Darnold. Everyone pretty much knows the optics of that. Like, it's
right. Yeah.
We're still in rebuild. We're still developing. Now, I will say this. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, he reported this, and I can confirm this too. Panthers not out on quarterbacks. They're not out on Baker Mayfield. They're not out on Jimmy Garoppolo, and maybe Nick Foles is in the mix.
Yeah, I did see Foles get cut. Like yesterday, the day before.
Yeah. So there's a possibility if the Browns can't find a trade partner for Baker Mayfield, which at this point is starting to look like is what's going to happen.
That's incredible to me. That's so incredible to me that
we're number 1 overall pick from 4 years ago, and he's not even that high.
2 years ago, he was battling Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game and almost won it. They were 11-5, and
he took the Browns to the playoffs and won a game.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. And now it's just like they just tossed him out with the trash. Like they didn't give him his 5th-year extension. He played all of last year with a torn labrum, like on his non-throwing shoulder.
Injury to play with. And to me, Baker Mayfield is a hell of a much better quarterback than Sam Darnold.
I agree. I've been trying to find holes. Like I couldn't figure out why the world has turned against him all of a sudden. I'm like, yeah, he's not.
He's at his
top tier at all.
He's certainly at his ceiling. Like he's not going to become a much better quarterback the rest of his career. Like this is what he's going to be. But what he's going to be now is far better than what you're probably ever going to get out of Sam Darnold.
Yeah. But, like his ceiling is higher, but both of their ceilings aren't like Pat Mahomes' ceiling, like or Josh Allen's ceiling or something like that.
And the other reason I think they're going to bring in more competition, or they could, is because Scott Fitter said from the very beginning of the offseason that they want someone to push Sam Darnold for that starting job. When you take Matt Corral, he's not ready to push Sam Darnold. He's going to be ready to come in, learn the offense, develop, understand how the NFL works, how to read. This is a guy that still has to understand coverages, how to do a 5 and 7 step drop, how to go through progressions, how to read a defense on downfield throws. This is not RPO game 100% of the time. Like This is a whole new different level for Matt Corral. He's not going to be pushing Sam Darnold for the starting job from day one in training camp. They're going to have to go find somebody from the outside to do that.
Now, I will say this, though. Those same type of concerns came up when they drafted Cam Newton in 2011, that, you know, it would take him some time to get out of an RPO offense that he ran and was successful with at Auburn. And he literally started week one, threw for 400-something yards, and it was off to the races then. So now, do I think Matt Corral will start day one? I have no idea. But I'm still kind of learning a little bit about Corral myself, but I like the intangibles that they're talking about. Great feet. Quick release, which typically you'll get from an RPO style quarterback.
Great arm.
Like a great arm. He seems like the type where the reason why I wanted Baker Mayfield was because I wanted that kind of that Jake Delhomme spunk, that thing that makes guys kind of run through walls for you. Cam had it too, where like guys love the dab and everything, the first down, all that stuff. Players love that stuff, especially if you're playing with Cam. They follow him. Like, think about the 2015 season, how much fun that team was having on the sidelines, taking pictures, group photos, and like posing and everything. And it was all Cam. Like, it was all Cam that was leading that. Jake, same way. Like, Jake kind of took over the team in 2003, and it took the personality of him. So I wanted someone. That's why I've fallen away from Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold doesn't really seem to have a personality that the guys follow. You know what I mean? Like, and you need that as a quarterback, a successful one in the league. Matt Corral seems like the type that does, and that was one of the things that attracted the Panthers to him.
Yeah, he's got some spunk to him. He's got some confidence to him. I wouldn't call him a cocky kid by any means, but he knows he can play. Like, he knows he can the ball. And the thing that I really like about Matt Corral, now, if you've read any of my stuff lately on All Panthers, you're probably like, okay, he hates Matt Corral, but there's just so much to Matt Corral that has to be developed because of the system that he played in, and it didn't showcase it. It's not saying that he can't do things in the NFL that he's going to be asked to do. It's just we haven't seen it on tape. Now, when you look at his traits, like the quick release, everyone has been saying this. Matt Rhule, Scott Fitter, a lot of draft experts, and from what I've watched, he has the quickest release I have seen probably in the last 5 or 6 drafts. It's not even close. Now, the athleticism, it's there. He can make throws all over the field. He can make off-balance throws and put the ball pinpoint right where it needs to be. The biggest thing with him is cutting down on the turnovers. And like I think Larry said on the rundown last week, is I think there was like 2 games where he had 10 or 11 picks combined.
Mm-hmm. So, not last year, but the year before, I think. Yeah.
So when the turnovers come, they come in bunches. That's what you've got to eliminate. Live for the next down. He's going to learn that. And I think, honestly, being with Ben McAdoo, he's going to learn so much in a short period of time. I think we might see Corral be more ready earlier than maybe even I anticipate, because he's going to be working with Ben McAdoo behind a very maybe not experienced offensive line, but a very talented one as well.
And I mean, you got to think Matt Corral's looking around. He's like, okay, they just rebuilt this offensive line. I've got an all-pro at right tackle, probably the best prospect in the draft at left tackle. When healthy, I've got a top 5 overall player behind me in the backfield, and Christian McCaffrey, the ultimate quarterback lifesaver in terms of hell, he made Sam Darnold look good the first 3 weeks of last season. Like, I'm just sitting there trying to imagine. I would think that if them drafting him, that they would do what they did with Cam, and that's sprinkle some elements of RPO into the offense that they're installing to make it more comfortable for him. Because that's exactly what they did for Cam. Actually, he was it wasn't a full blown RPO like what the Eagles are running now, or what the Ravens kind of took from what we were doing before, but it was almost a blend of Wildcat and RPO and a little bit of West Coast offense kind of mixed in there together. And that was when Chud was here, and we had the 2 tight ends with Greg Olson and what's his name from Shockey, Jeremy Shockey, which was a great offense. I don't know why more people haven't gone back to that 2 tight end set more often, like the Patriots did on that little run when they were going back to the Super Bowl. But I would think that they wouldn't if they're going to use Corral, I would think they would put some more RPO into the play, which is super dangerous because now you've got Corral maybe handing off to Christian McCaffrey. And that's a different beast than anything else I can think of in the league in terms of what you can do out of that set. Because you can fake it to him, you can screen it to him, you can actually give it to him. You can, I mean, there's all these different things he can do off of just that one mesh point. And I'm waiting for someone to do it the way Wake Forest does it, where Wake Forest does this really long mesh point. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know if you can do it in the pros, but the way Wake does it, it's pretty cool in college because, like, they'll sit there with it for like 4 seconds before they decide.
Yeah,
I don't think you can do that. If you've got, like, I'm trying to think of what the
Aaron Donald coming up.
Yeah, that's probably barbecue chicken. Like, he's like, thank you for just standing here waiting on me to come in here and kill you real quick.
Matt Corral has been the hardest guy for me to find a comparison to. Like,
that's what I was just about to ask you. Is there someone out there that he reminds you of?
It's so hard because, like, his game is just so different from any other quarterback that I've watched over the years coming into the draft. Like Kenny Pickett, I can see, people comparing him to Andy Dalton. I kind of actually see Daniel Jones a little bit in Kenny Pickett, where, I can see maybe even a Ryan Tannehill and Kenny Pickett. But
I'm not feeling good about that.
But
maybe Phil.
I think with Matt Corral, it's so hard because when's the last time you've had a guy come out of the draft who's not necessarily huge, but has a quick release, has some athleticism to him. He's got a really good arm, very accurate. Like, I'm kind of getting a mix. Again, I'm not saying he's going to live up to the potential of these two guys, but the same traits as kind of like a Kyler Murray, Zach Wilson combined. That's about the best I can come up with. I cannot pinpoint one quarterback that I can sit there and be like, yep, that's who Matt Corral is going to be. But I think if you can take some Zach Wilson's game, some of Kyler Murray's game, and combine them,
okay,
kind of what you get in Matt Corral and his traits. Again, that's not saying that's the kind of player that he's going to live up to be, but who knows?
Almost, I'm picturing kind of not a freestyling type of quarterback, but someone who's kind of nimble in the pocket. Although he's got size, Corral, he's kind of slight, but he's tall. He's not short. He's 6'2",
very lean, very, very lean.
Yeah, 6'2", 205. So he's going to get a shot because all these quarterbacks coming in here, they're all coming in fresh because they're all learning a brand new offense day one from Ben McAdoo. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it because it looks like they're going to have Corral versus Darnold. And like you said, Schuyler, they're not done. I mean, I'd be kind of shocked if they pulled a trade for Jimmy G or something like that at this point. But
how many weeks this upcoming season do you think we'll be on here talking about? Is this the week for Matt Corral? I'm going to say it's going to be about 9.5 weeks. So we're going to be sitting here talking.
I think the thing that's going to pooch this whole thing is that Sam Darnold's going to come out and actually have a good year. Like, he's going to come out in his 5th year and play well.
Like, if that would be the ultimate scenario for the Panthers, because he's on the last year of his deal, and if he goes out and plays well, then great. You can let Corral sit and develop. You don't have to throw him out there. And guess what? After this year, Sam Darnold's off the books. Now, he may want to come back. If he wants to come back for a 1-year, $10 million deal, maybe. I mean, I'm not going to hate on that if he plays well. We give Corral more time. But I think that would be the ultimate scenario for them. Have him come out play at least decent to where they don't have to throw Corral into the mix where he's not ready.
Some of the rest of the draft that we didn't get to Saturday on my show, The Rundown, because they hadn't started yet. 4th round selection, Brandon Smith, 6'3", 240 from Penn State. If I'm not mistaken, he's one of the fastest linebackers in this draft, if I remember correctly. Had 2 6th-round picks. Did they trade their 5th to move up to get Corral? Is that what happened?
They traded a 4th and a future 3rd to get Corral.
Where did our 5th go? I'm trying to remember what we did with the 5th pick.
The 5th was part of the trade to go up to get Brandon Smith, I believe.
Okay. So they did. So they moved up in the 4th and got Brandon Smith at 120. Amari Barno, 6th round, defensive end from Virginia Tech. I see the physical comparisons to Brian Burns, 6'6", 245.
Yeah, it's almost.
It's like a clone. Yeah, it's like a clone of him almost. Now, if you can get them in there and they're both, raising hell in there, that's such a great value in 6th round if Barno can pan out to just being a rotational piece on that defensive line for Phil Snow. Cade Mays, 6th round selection. And to me, this is where you get your offensive linemen. This is where you get your depth, is in the 5th round, 6th round, guys that just dudes that has been, throwing dudes on the ground for 4 years. 6'6", 325 from Tennessee. I need to ask JP Mundy about this guy because Tennessee is his team. But Cade Mays and then Kaylan Barnes, a 7th-round selection, 6 foot 185 cornerback out of Baylor. The cornerback room, we've talked about this the past 2 months. Our cornerback room is pretty jammed up right now. So I would imagine if he makes it on this team, it'll probably be, like you said, a gunner, special teams. Hell, with that speed, I wouldn't be surprised if they try him out at a kick returner, although I thought I saw they signed a kick returner. Yeah. So, and he wasn't in these unrestricted free agent or undrafted free agent list that I pulled here. There's no way for us to grade this because we don't know what they're going to do. But I will say off of potential, I think Carolina knocked it out the park in terms of what they had available to them and filling need without having to reach and not giving up future high-end draft selections, like top 3 rounds. Like Fitterer was very specific. He didn't want to give away 1st or 2nd round picks to do anything. And they succeeded. They were able to do that. Got all their picks for next year. This is a very young team. People forget how young this Panthers team is. Let's go back to last year because we can kind of grade this draft class now. This was a loaded draft class. 11 picks from the Panthers 2021. Starting off 1st round, they had J.C. Horn, cornerback, South Carolina. Kind of surprised a lot of folks when they drafted him with Justin Fields and Mac Jones, quarterback, still on the board. And we had not done anything with Sam Darnold yet. They, of course, extended him to his 5th year the very next day after they drafted JC. We only saw JC for 3 games. Got hurt in the Houston game week 3. But by all accounts, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm just remembering it wrong, but he felt like a shutdown corner those first 3 weeks. So we'll see. I know he's training to be back. And it's almost like we got 2 first-round picks this year because we didn't really see JC last year. So you're really adding Icky and JC back to this unit.
Yeah, I would give it a B+ right now just because I think we haven't seen enough from him. But, I mean, the potential's seriously there for him to be an A+ pick. The one thing that I find intriguing is what if you were Fitterer knowing this all was going to play out the way it did last year, would you have took one of those quarterbacks, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, whoever, and then get Sauce this year or Stingley this year? Now, obviously, they went ahead of the Panthers, but saying that they would have been available, Sauce or Stingley being on the board, or would you go with JC and what they ended up doing?
That's a really good question. And a better question would be, who do you think was the better cornerback in college, JC Horn or Stingley or Sauce Gardner? Because that's really kind of what's going to come down to, right? Like in terms of –
I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with the corners. I think the quarterbacks in this scenario, you would obviously get the quarterback in the corner and it would leave the offensive tackle out. So you almost kind of want to say that the way they did it ended up working out because they got all 3 positions. You just don't know about the quarterback yet.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Let me – hold on. I'm pulling back up I lost my place. Terence Marshall Jr. in the 2nd round. They did a lot of wheeling and dealing last year in Fitterer's first go-around as general manager. Wide receiver, LSU, played on the record-breaking 2019 LSU team. I thought it was a great pick there. Well, hopefully we'll see some more from him this year. Brady Christensen in the 3rd round. If I remember correctly, he was the highest rated left tackle according to Pro Football Focus going into that draft. Looks like he's going to get moved over to left guard, which is kind of where they wanted him because Matt Rhule has a thing about arm length with linemen. So he's going to get his wish, and Christian's going to kick over to left guard. However, now we know he can play left tackle in a pinch. So you've got someone that can move over to left tackle if something happens to Icky. So that's going to be an interesting side of the ball. Christensen and Ekwonu on your left, and you got Moten and Corbett on your right. So you got some beef up there. 6'6", 300. Tommy Tribble went in the 3rd round as well, the tight end from Notre Dame. I'm really high on Tribble. I feel like he's got a really high ceiling in terms of what he could do, especially in a Ben McAdoo offense. I feel like for some reason why tight ends are specialized in these offenses that Ben McAdoo uses, which helps the quarterbacks that he's been training. Chuba Hubbard, I actually saw extended playing time last year due to the injury to Christian McCaffrey. Liked what I saw. Who was the other guy they brought in at running back late in the year? Came from Minnesota.
Amir Abdullah. Is he still on the roster? No, he's with the Raiders now.
I really liked him. He had a little pep in his step. But Chuba will be going into his 3rd year. was the leading rusher nationally coming out of college, out of Oklahoma State. Davion Nixon out of Iowa was a 5th-round selection, defensive tackle, 6'3", 305. He got some run. Keith Taylor Jr., cornerback from Washington in the 5th round. And Deontay Brown, 6th-round pick, a guard from Alabama. I want to say he got some run last year too. Shi Smith, is Shi Smith still on the team? Did they let him go?
As of today, he's still there.
Okay, so he's still there as of now. I know he had some legal issues about a month ago. He was a 6th-round pick. I thought maybe he would take over the kickoff return duties, but we'll see. Thomas Fletcher, long snapper from Alabama last year, and Phil Hoskins, the 7th-round defensive tackle, who I want to say he's still on the roster too, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So all these dudes, like, for the most part, the one thing Matt Rhule's not scared to do is play his young guys. And all of these dudes got minutes last year. They got reps. So, I mean, having said that, and then looking at the 2020 class, Matt Corral is going to play. Ike's going to start day one, but a lot of these dudes are going to probably get a chance to play just because that's just kind of the makeup of the team. And then we get to the 2020 class, the first draft that Matt Rhule had, that we can really grade now, because I think most of these guys are still on the team also. Derek Brown, the 1st-round pick, a defensive tackle. Your Gross Matos was round 2, defensive line. Jeremy Chin was a 2nd-round pick that pretty much the entire league thought was a great pick after the fact when they saw Chin play. Troy Pride Jr. at cornerback, round 4. Kenny Robinson, a safety, at round 5. Bravion Roy was really starting to come on in the rotation, and I think he got hurt last year. And then Stanley Thomas Oliver III at cornerback, round 7. I don't think he's still on the team. Is he?
Yeah. He is as of right now, but I'm almost wondering with the guys they brought in free agency, like Chris Westry, some of those bottom of the line, not bottom of the line, I should say that, but the not sought after cornerbacks like Chris Westry that they brought in, and at drafting Kaylan Barnes, I think those guys, getting Troy Pride back, he was hurt all of last year. Everyone forgets about him, like you just mentioned him. Mm-hmm. Those group of guys, I think they're all going to be battling for a roster spot. So I think one of those guys, maybe two, could see their way off the roster.
So, I mean, a telltale sign of a good draft class is if, those guys are still on the team 2-3 years later. And one of the fallbacks, actually one of the jokes that used to be going around regarding former GM Marty Herney was that he'd always knock out the 1st-round pick, like Hall of Famers, Julius Peppers, Jordan Gross. But then the rest of the draft would be like, like, I mean, every once in a while he'd find like a Steve Smith in the 3rd round or something to that effect. But for the most part, he would nail the 1st-round pick. Thomas Davis, Cam Newton, Jordan Gross, Christian McCaffrey. Those he would get. It was just everything else afterwards. And these draft classes, as I'm looking at them, are pretty strong. Like 2020, we can say is a very strong draft class. Just looking at the top 3, Derek Brown, Gross Matos is pretty much a starter now. Jeremy Chin's the de facto main safety in this offense. Last year, 2021, out of that draft, J.C. Horn is basically cornerback number 1. If not number 2. I would assume him and Jackson are going to be the starting cornerbacks. Terence Marshall Jr. is interesting because I feel like he makes Robbie Anderson expendable. Like, eventually they're going to decide if they want to move on from Robbie and let Terence get some snaps as he's still on his rookie deal, because he's going into year 2 now. Kind of disappeared at the end of last year, but got some run at the very beginning to the detriment of Robbie Anderson's catch numbers. So we'll see how that plays out. Brady Christensen was starting by the end of the year. Tommy Tremble was in a lot of the offensive sets last year. Chuba Hubbard was the starting running back once McCaffrey got hurt. Nixon was in the rotation on defense, on the line. Keith Taylor Jr., he's still on the team, isn't he? Is Keith Taylor Jr. still on the team?
Yeah. He actually started a few games there towards the end.
Okay, yeah, with all the banged up cornerbacks. I thought he was. Deontay Brown's interesting. I thought he would have gotten more of a shot coming out of Alabama, but I assume he's still on the roster. 6'4", 335. He provides some depth, but now with what they've done reshuffling the line, I'm not sure how much play he's going to get. Look for him in the preseason. A lot of these guys in the preseason games. And Phil Hoskins, 7th round guy out of Kentucky last year.
He was
playing. What was that?
He was a low risk, high reward type of guy in Deontay Brown because you knew that the potential was there. I don't even think he gave up a sack at Alabama. I don't know if it was for his career or his season. I know there was some weird stat that he had done, but big guys he took a long time to get into playing condition last year. And then I think he ended up getting hurt at one point. So rough year for him. It'll be interesting to see where he comes in terms of weight when we get to Spartanburg.
So they have a rookie camp May 11th through 13th, if I'm not mistaken. The whole rookie mini camp May 13th through the 15th. So we're kind of back on a regular clock again in terms of how the NFL works. I've actually thought about, where's that rookie mini? Is it in Spartanburg, you said?
No, it'll be in Charlotte.
Yeah. And I'm actually considering, if they're going to open it up, I'm considering coming down to Charlotte for actual training camp late July. So if we do that, we'll have to set something up so we can finally meet face to face, and maybe we can do this in a Panera or something and get an episode out. But we're looking at the draft classes. If you've had an issue with Matt Rhule over the past 2 or 3 years, think of the draft. Go look up the draft classes. Just look at them, and maybe it'll make you feel a little better about where the team is going. And a friend of mine brought up a great point Saturday, something that we've all kind of missed. All of Matt Rhule's teams the past couple of years, they really take off in year 3. Year 3 is when they really make a complete turnaround, and this is year 3. And if you look at this squad, I've got buddies that pick on me all the time because they say that I'm too full of hope, especially as a Panther fan, and that I'm just setting myself up for failure every year. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm a fan of the team. I'm not supposed to, oh, woe is me, we suck. Like, I'm never going to be that kind of fan. And I'm just kind of looking at the roster like, okay, now the Saints did a lot of work draft weekend to improve their team, and they are much improved. They just signed Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, to play safety, and he's from there. Like, the Superdome's going to be off the chain this year whenever they're playing. Saints have one of the best defenses in the league. They still have Jameis Winston at quarterback, so and no Sean Payton. So Tom Brady's back, yes, but he's 44 and he's missing. I want to say he's missing some pieces from the 2 years ago from the Tampa Bay Super Bowl run. And that, I'm sorry, I know it's Tom Brady, but it can't last forever. It just can't. Like, it has to be a point where he regresses back to the mean. I'm not going to do a Max Kellerman and be like, it's this year or anything like that. I'm hoping it'll be this year. I'm setting all this up to say the Panthers could possibly win the NFC South. Like, am I too crazy as we're getting towards the end here to say this, looking at the roster? If certain things pan out, like if we can just get average quarterback play and McCaffrey just stays upright for a season, looking at the defense, looking at the offensive line, is it nuts to suggest that the Panthers can contend this year?
For the division, I would say, yeah. It's still Tom Brady. Like, unless he gets hurt, I think they're going to win the division. The Saints are a much better team than Panthers right now, but I think they're clearly the third team in this division. The Falcons are just a mess. Like, they're so bad. They may not win 3 games this year, but for the Panthers, I think you got to look at it like the quarterback play is what it is. The defense is better. The offensive line is better. The receiving room is really not much different from what it was a year ago.
Didn't really need to be, though. I thought it was a pretty strong group in there.
Yeah, and the thing is, you look at the schedule. The schedule is not officially out yet, but they know the opponents. It's a tough schedule. I mean, they got the Bengals, the Steelers.
Oh, the AFC North.
I don't remember the other division, but
I don't know who they're playing.
Yeah, so I mean, the schedule is ridiculously tough. Just the schedule alone, I don't know if they can get to 7 or 8 wins, but like you said, year 3, this was kind of the thing that me and you talked about all season long when people were already, clamoring for him to be fired, is that, listen, if you're going to give this man a 7-year commitment, you've got to at least know that in his history, year 3 is when the tide starts to turn. And if you don't give him that year 3, it's going to make you look stupid for even giving him a 7-year deal.
That's when
you got to at least let him get to the point where it constantly turns to see if it happens. If he doesn't turn it this year, then fire him. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's a bad idea, but you have to at least give him that opportunity.
And they'd have to bottom out. Like, they would have to go like 3-14 or something this year to make it really feel like it's not working. Because, I mean, as much as we've bellyached, and maybe it's because of the way the seasons went, where they got their wins early and then it was just loss. So it kind of felt like piling on. But, I mean, they basically stayed the same with injuries in 2021. And 2020 was a COVID year. He didn't even meet his players until July. Like first time head coach in the NFL, and he can't even see his players face to face because of a pandemic. So, I mean, I kind of I do give him a mulligan for year one. And then last year, they had to fire the offensive coordinator halfway through. Darnold got hurt after he was starting to fail. Your best weapon
went down.
I mean, a lot of stuff. Your first round pick gets hurt. McCaffrey gets hurt week 3. It was just a lot. So, I mean, that was the thing that was bothering me the most, is people saying David Tepper was being impatient and that he wanted something done now. Looking back on those comments, it makes it sound like people were just making that up, like for a story. Like nobody knew what David Tepper was thinking. And when he finally came out and talked last week, it was the complete polar opposite. Like
it's hard to know what he's thinking when he doesn't say anything.
Doesn't say anything. I think on purpose, which is probably the way to go. Like, don't say anything. Stay out of the way. Don't be Jerry Jones with a radio show every week. Just stay out of the way. And once a year, he comes out and addresses the public. I did think it was funny during that press conference that everybody wanted to keep asking him about Charlotte FC. And he was like, I'm not answering any questions about the soccer team. And then the very next question would be, so with Charlotte FC and the Panthers together, are you thinking about building a stadium and blah, blah, blah. You could just see him like cartoon temperature thing rising. Yeah, he's just like,
That and the Rock Hill questions, that was hilarious. And
yeah.
I'm
going to honor them.
People have to ask these questions. I get it. But after a certain point, when he said the same thing every time, like, I respect Rock Hill. They don't want to say, like, okay, if he doesn't want to talk about it, then let's stop asking the question.
Ask him something else. The draft is in 3 days, and y'all are talking about this thing that's been stalled in Rock Hill and is never. I mean, plus people can't wrap their minds around the idea that this dude has enough money where he can just abandon that and go build someplace else, and he'll be just fine. Like literally, like I mean, people can't. I don't even know where that came from. No hands. People can't even like wrap around $16 billion in their head for like a $70 million complex or whatever he's building. That's like a grocery trip, like to him, like that's nothing. Like he can literally just go buy some land someplace else and just have more control over it next time and just get the whole city of Charlotte to pay for it instead of depending on Rock Hill. Like he gave you a shot, and I don't think that's gonna ever be fixed, although I'm hearing that there's still a slight chance that maybe they can get something together, but it sounds like they're walking away from it.
Yeah, there's a chance, and I've been meaning to get this article done for almost all over a week now. I spoke to one of the congressmen down there in South Carolina to get some quotes from him. Obviously, Tepper said his stuff this past week, so that should be up on the site within the next, hopefully by the end of the week. The draft just completely put everything on the back burner, but
yeah, things will start getting slower now the draft's over, and they'll start doing some rookie things. We got to get out of here, but follow Schuyler on Twitter at Callihan_ for the latest on Carolina Panthers and Charlotte Hornets. I just saw it came across my phone earlier this morning that the Hornets have finally opened up their head coaching search. So definitely follow Schuyler for the latest on that. I've got my fingers crossed for Mark Jackson, although I don't even know if he's on the list or not. But that's who I want. So we'll see what the Hornets do there. You can follow me on Twitter at Dez_3505. That's DEZ_3505, or at Tobacco Radio. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of Bleav in Panthers, and keep pounding.